Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, has now confirmed that he is under federal investigation. And while he says this has something to do with tax issues, we're finally getting reporting from the mainstream media that, in fact, this has something to do with potential money laundering and illicit business dealings with China. My friends, this may be the biggest media scandal in U.S. history. When the story broke about Hunter Biden's potential wrongdoing and the fact that Joe Biden himself may have been in on the take, the media said it was Russian disinformation. NPR said it's not news and we won't waste time with distractions. They lied to us, covered up the truth, in my opinion, to help Joe Biden get elected, to install an individual who is corrupt and compromised. A man named Tony Bobulinski, who worked with the Biden family, came forward and said the Bidens are compromised. We saw the story, but big tech and big media did everything they could to suppress it. Following the election, a poll was conducted of American citizens and found a large portion did not know that Hunter Biden was potentially under investigation or that he had been involved in illicit business dealings with China. They learned of this from the questions in the poll and said, had they known, they would not have voted for Joe Biden. A small portion, but large enough that Joe Biden likely would not have won. Now, it's just one poll. Maybe it's not true. But in my opinion, I think if the American people had real journalism informing them that Joe Biden, the big guy, was getting a cut of illicit business dealings, they probably would not have voted for him. The media wanted this man in power, and congratulations. While Donald Trump is signing historic peace agreements today between Morocco and Israel, we look forward to the prospect of a corrupt individual who is compromised by China. Now, of course, this investigation isn't proof positive they're corrupted or compromised by China. But just the other day, about a day or so ago, a video went viral of a Chinese professor named Didong Sheng, who bragged that now that Trump is out, they will be able to sway U.S. policy. That before Trump, they had old friends helping them manipulate U.S. policy. He goes on to mention that Donald Trump was talking about Hunter Biden's business dealings. And he says, Hunter Biden became very wealthy, but who do you think helped him do it? And the audience laughs. And he says, got it? This is the biggest media scandal of my lifetime, at least. You may know the story of Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald is, in my opinion, one of the most consequential journalists of our generation. He's the one who published the NSA leaks. He was forced to resign from the news organization he founded because they refused to report on these stories about Hunter Biden and his corruption. And now we're learning a month after the election why Glenn was right. And many of these outlets were right, but they were being protected and the media would not be honest with the American people. My friends, journalism is dead. What has replaced it is a corrupt, propagandistic establishment to serve the elites. That's it. The democracy that we claim to have, that many on the left claim we have, cannot be served so long as the American people have no idea what's really happening. Years of claims of Russian disinformation, accusations against Trump, and it turns out it's the Bidens. And it was the media who was doing everything in their power to protect them. And I'm going to stop right there and say this. Many people in the comments are probably already saying, Tim, we know the media is corrupt. We know they do this. Yep. But now we have possibly the biggest confirmation that the press in this country have been doing everything in their power to hurt the American people, to empower the corrupt at the highest levels of government. Let's read the story. Before we do, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do is share this video. Let people know what's happening with the news organizations in this country. They do not serve the people. They are lying to us every single day. And this is the worst I have ever seen it. And I can only imagine it's going to get worse from here. You don't forget to also subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and let's read. But I'll tell you what. I have this story pulled up from the Washington Post. Hunter Biden confirms he is under federal investigation. They say federal prosecutors have been investigating Hunter Biden, President-elect Joe Biden's son, to determine if he failed to report income from China-related business deals, according to people familiar with the matter. A politically explosive probe that is likely to challenge the Justice Department in the incoming administration. I am sick to my stomach at the level of depravity and corruption from these media outlets who have the gall to tell me it is politically explosive now when we knew this months ago. And they shut the story down to protect one of the most criminally complicit and corrupt families in this country. For decades, for nearly 50 years, the Biden family was enriching themselves off of Joe Biden's name and public service, if you can call it that. His brother made millions of dollars building in Iraq. When Joe Biden conveniently got into office and began overseeing Iraq, guess whose brother got a lucrative contract? Guess who flew their son to China for these investigations? The investigation into Joe Biden's son includes Joe Biden, who used Air Force Two to fly his son to China, and the media covered it up, protected this family. And now we're told we're going to sit back and just wait until this crooked, despotic family takes authority in this country. That's what they're telling us. Disgusting. I'm not going to read this story from the Washington Post because Politico just upped the ante. The Justice Department's interest in Hunter Biden covered more than taxes. Federal prosecutors also have investigated foreign ties, possible money laundering. You know what I'm going to say to you, Politico? You are disgusting, you are corrupt, and you are the worst example of everything wrong with this media. December 9th, 2020. Federal prosecutors also investigated foreign ties and possible money laundering. I'd like to bring you back in time to October 19th from Natasha Bertrand. Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo, dozens of former intel officials say. More than 50 former intelligence officials signed a letter casting doubt on the provenance of a New York Post story on the former vice president's son. They spit in our faces, they lie to us, and they laugh all the way down. And now as Donald Trump fights as hard as possible to retain the presidency, and he should, they're telling us that it is a foregone conclusion that Donald Trump has lost. And you know what they're doing? You see, now that we're a month out from the election, and they're comfortable in saying that he's lost, they're laughing. They're spitting on us with news like this. This, they didn't need to cover. They could have just maintained the lie, but they want you to know. They want you to know they are spitting in your face. Remember that story we told you was fake news? Guess what? It was real the whole time. Go yourself, because we don't care about you. That's what they're telling us. Politico reports the federal investigation into Joe Biden's son, Hunter, has been more extensive than a statement from Hunter Biden indicates, according to a person with firsthand knowledge of the investigation. On Wednesday, Hunter Biden said he had been contacted about a tax investigation out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware. In addition to Delaware, the Securities Fraud Unit in the Southern District of New York also scrutinized Hunter Biden's finances, according to the person with direct knowledge of the investigation. The person said that, as of early last year, investigators in Delaware and Washington were also probing potential money laundering and Hunter Biden's foreign ties. The person spoke on the condition of anonymity because they are not authorized to discuss the matter publicly. In addition to the probe into Hunter Biden, federal authorities in the Western District of Pennsylvania are conducting a criminal investigation of a hospital business in which Joe Biden's brother, James, was involved. Federal officials have asked questions about James Biden's role in the business, according to a second person with direct knowledge of that investigation, who said it remains ongoing. I have never been this sickened and angry. Is Joe Biden compromised? Yes. What would a father not do to protect their son, his only living son now, or his brother, who've both enriched themselves with his help? This is a crime family. Now, they're not the most egregious offenders of crime families. The left is saying, oh, the Bidens are masterminds, but people say that Biden is too bumbling and stupid. Biden is old and hapless, but certainly in his 50 years, he used his name and connections to enrich his family. In an email that was published from Hunter Biden's laptop, we learned that there was a 10% cut from a Chinese equity deal for the big guy. We learned from a man named Tony Bobulinski who worked with this family, it was included in these emails, that Joe Biden was the big guy. And he said, this is from radio.com, former Biden associate tells Tucker Carlson that Joe Biden is compromised by China. Tony Bobulinski, a former business associate of Hunter Biden, explains to Tucker Carlson the questionable business dealings between the Bidens, China, and Russia. Quote, I think Joe Biden and the Biden family are compromised, said Bobulinski, a man who worked directly with the Biden family and expressed his outrage. You see, Bobulinski told the Biden family not to take a $5 million interest-free forgivable loan, which I would only describe as a gift. And when he only found out they did when the emails were leaked. And that caused him to come forward saying, I told them not to do this. And they went behind my back to enrich themselves. Joe Biden's son and brother are being investigated for crimes, financial crimes. The media knew about this. They lied about this, and they covered it up because they don't care about you. They care about enriching the establishment and the cathedral. James Rosen tweeted, Justice Department official confirms that in 2019, the FBI opened up a criminal investigation into Hunter Biden and his associates, focused on allegations of money laundering, and that it remains open and active today. What'll happen if Joe Biden is inaugurated? Joe Biden will likely get rid of the investigation. We need a special prosecutor now, and unsurprisingly, Tom Cotton has called for a special counsel to investigate Hunter Biden. They say Cotton alleged during a Fox News interview that Hunter Biden appears to be the subject of a far-ranging investigation and cited allegations of securities fraud, money laundering, and a crooked hospital deal with Jim Biden, Joe Biden's brother. Quote, these investigations span multiple jurisdictions, and if Joe Biden becomes president, then all of those prosecutors are in line to be fired next month. If there were ever circumstances that created a conflict of interest and called for a special counsel, I think those circumstances are present here. The Biden family has been trading on Joe Biden's public office for 50 years. Do we really think that will change if Joe Biden becomes president, the highest office in the land? Cotton made his comments a day after Hunter Biden disclosed the U.S. Attorney's Office in Delaware is investigating his tax affairs. Quote, I take this matter very seriously, but I am confident that a professional and objective review of these matters will demonstrate that I handled my affairs legally and appropriately, including with the benefit of professional tax advisors. But is it really just about what's legal? There's a lot of things that you could argue are legal that we probably wouldn't want our politicians to be doing. How about trading securities off of classified COVID information, or learning about what's going on with COVID, and then all of a sudden your third-party advisors make a bunch of beneficial trades where you make a ton of money off of the coming pandemic? Yes, not illegal, but we don't like that it's happening. Joe Biden uses his influence to enrich himself and his family, and that's it. There are alleged text messages that we've seen from Hunter Biden, and they very much implicate Joe, the emails themselves, and Tony Bobulinski. But my friends, this is not just about the Biden family. It's about how the media has sold us out. You know, it's really crazy. Donald Trump called them the enemy of the people for so long. And for a long time, I just said it's a bit hyperbolic and not a big fan of calling, all of these people. But Trump said, no, the fake news, not the good journalists, not the real journalists, perhaps. But what do you do when Politico employs someone like, say, Natasha Bertrand, who wrote this story that it was Russian disinformation protecting the Biden family while they commit crimes, or while they're presumably committing crimes? I'll put it that way. Want to avoid litigation. What do? Glenn Greenwald resigned. This was one of the most significant historical moments, in my opinion. Many people may not be familiar with Glenn, or they may not care that much about him, or Glenn may disagree because I'm calling him one of the most consequential journalists of our generation, but it's true. I don't think it's just an opinion. This is a man who published some of the biggest revelations. And I'm not the biggest fan of Glenn Greenwald. I respect him for a lot of reasons, but I have my criticisms of him as well. I think he could have done better with the NSA revelations. And there's a lot of concerns about, how slowly he rolled them out and the money he took to launch The Intercept. But he left The Intercept, a news organization that wasn't going to let him cover this story. Glenn writes on his now Substack This is Substack, for those aren't familiar, is where individuals can publish their own articles and people pay a subscription. It's kind of like a written Patreon kind of platform. Glenn says, with news of Hunter Biden's criminal probe, recall the media outlets that peddled the Russian disinformation lie. The now validated facts about Hunter are precisely those the U.S. media, in tandem with Silicon Valley and the intelligence community, suppressed based on lies. He shows from Politico, Natasha Bertrand's article, he shows this story. Dozens of former intelligence officials sign a letter warning Hunter Biden's story could be disinfo. Here's one from NPR, public editor. Why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post's Hunter Biden story? Quote, we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. Glenn writes, the revelation that Hunter Biden is being criminally investigated for his business activities in China came on Monday from the investigative target himself, and he predictably and self-servingly depicted it as just a narrow probe about his tax affairs by the U.S. Attorney for Delaware. As I wrote last night, that by itself would be significant enough. The documents published in the weeks before the election by the New York Post contained ample information about exactly the matter, yet were widely repressed by a union of mainstream news outlets, the intelligence community, and Silicon Valley based on propaganda and lies. But new reporting suggests the investigation has been far broader. I have to stop and ask this question. Why are they now admitting it? Why is the Washington Post? Why is Politico now saying straight up, yep, it's happening? Because they hate you. They hate you. I know it's a bold thing to say, and I'm not one to usually engage in that kind of rhetoric, but think about it. They don't need to. There's no obligation for these news outlets to now come out and smear Joe Biden after helping him. They're doing it because they want you to know how much they disrespect you, how little they care about you, and how funny they find it that they screwed with our elections and your life. That's it. If they were willing to lie and suppress this information before the election, they have no obligation to come out and wave it in our faces and brag about how it's real. Now that the election's over, they actually say politically explosive will certainly play a role with Joe Biden becoming president. They want you to know it is a serious scandal, but Joe Biden's going to become president anyway. It's almost like they want this country to explode in a fit of rage. Now, I'm not going to read everything Glenn writes because this is his Substack where he actually charges, but I want to read one important part. And I've had to actually remove pictures of the emails because it's bannable to show them. That's the pressure and the suppression the media is doing on this information. Glenn writes, the pre-election article I wrote and was blocked from publishing by The Intercept, which precipitated my departure from that outlet, extensively discussed these documents' revelations regarding the attempts by Hunter and Biden's brother Jim to exploit the former vice president's influence in China to generate profit for the Biden family. Among other things, the censored article described the Biden family's pursuit of business opportunities in China, referenced, quote, proposals for lucrative business deals in China that traded on his influence and his father, discussed the possibility suggested by the emails that Hunter, along with Joe Biden's brother Jim, were planning on including the former vice president in at least one deal in China, and argued that these documents raised the critical question of, quote, whether Biden ever knew about business proposals in Ukraine or China being pursued by his son and brother, in which Biden was a proposed participant. All of these vital facts and questions about Hunter's activity in China were largely suppressed from the voting population by the bulk of the U.S. media, working in tandem with Silicon Valley, which simply prevented the story from being discussed and shared on key platforms, and the intelligence community. How was this accomplished? Largely through outright propaganda, a blatant two-pronged lie that these materials should be ignored because they constitute Russian disinformation. There has never been any evidence that Russia played any role whatsoever in these materials. The New York Times acknowledged no concrete evidence has emerged that the laptop contains Russian disinformation. And the paper said even the FBI has, quote, acknowledged that it had not found any Russian disinformation on the laptop. This newly disclosed criminal probe obviously constitutes very strong evidence of their authenticity, as was the confirmation at the time from several participants in the emails that they were genuine. Critically, not even the Bidens denied the materials from the laptop were authentic. As the Times noted last night in its story about the criminal investigation into Hunter, the Biden team has rejected some of the claims made in the New York Post articles, but has not disputed the authenticity of the laptop files upon which they were based. Even the letter used by these media outlets to peddle the, quote, Russian disinformation lie from known liars, former CIA and other intelligence community leaders who claimed that the Hunter laptop story has all the classic earmarks of Russian information, admitted we do not have evidence of Russian involvement. We must, in my opinion, launch a special counsel investigation immediately. There is currently a lawsuit going through, docketed for the Supreme Court. We've not yet seen, as of time of recording this video, if they're going to pick it up and take the case. 17 states have issued a statement of support for the lawsuit. Now, several more states have filed a motion to intervene. This is the next step. Many people said that 17 states had joined Texas's lawsuit. They haven't. They filed what's called I think it's called amici curiae. I can't pronounce it properly. It's basically saying, friend of the court, that we're in agreement that we support this claim. The latest development is that many of these states have officially filed to intervene, meaning they are asking permission to be plaintiffs in the lawsuit. And this is huge. I think we should all be sitting here crossing our fingers and hoping that Donald Trump succeeds. The media tricked us and manipulated us to make sure that someone crooked like Joe Biden could win. Joe Biden will use that office to destroy the investigations, to cover things up. And maybe that's why he was so desperate to win. And maybe that's why, as a very, very old man, he's decided to be president. Why would someone so old want this job, and a job that's very devastating? Why would Nancy Pelosi put forth the 25th Amendment to remove him in the event he's incapable? That was clearly because Joe Biden is likely incapable. Joe Biden, in my opinion, is taking this job because he knows Donald Trump was digging into things. Go back in time. Let's go back in time to the famous Ukraine phone call. Donald Trump said there's a video of Joe Biden bragging about getting a prosecutor fired. There are concerns that Joe Biden got this prosecutor fired in Ukraine to protect his son, who was potentially about to be sucked into an investigation based on the fact that he was a board member for a company called Burisma, which was under active investigation. In fact, dozens of active investigations. Joe Biden, in my opinion, went to Ukraine and got a prosecutor fired to protect his son. Trump called and he said, I would like you to look into this. They impeached Trump over it, desperately attempting to protect the Bidens. Joe Biden, they said, Trump is trying to dig up dirt on his political rival, but Joe Biden wasn't even running for president at the time. All of a sudden, then Joe Biden says, I'm going to run. And he steps up, even though there's a quote from Barack Obama saying, Joe, you don't need to do this. So let me ask you, Joe Biden wasn't running. Trump started digging into the criminal activities of the Biden family. Joe Biden then decides to run, and all of a sudden it was off. It was off the table. Trump was no longer allowed to investigate the criminal activities of a corrupt, crooked individual like Joe Biden and the crooked individuals in his family. That was the cover. And the media helped. Special interest at these news outlets helped. These people need to be fired immediately. But it's not going to happen. We need a special counsel, and maybe we'll get it because Tom Cotton is calling for it. But I want to briefly highlight this story. This is from Media Research Center pointing out that in a poll, they found 13% of voters didn't know about Hunter Biden and Joe's corruption. 4.6% of Biden's total vote said that had they known, 13% of Biden's total vote. 4.6% of Biden's total vote and 13% of all voters said that if they knew the facts, they would have not voted for former Vice President Joe Biden. The media is actively protecting a criminal family. I'm not pretending that the Bidens are the smartest criminal family, but they're criminals. I don't know what we could do. They expect us to just sit here and smile as a known criminal family now would be entering the White House. The left will ignore it. Many of these progressives will ignore it. They don't care. They think the orange man is bad, and many of them can't tell you why. but it's because the media lied. They protected these people, and this is what we're facing now. The stories about Hunter are true and worse than we knew. Media lied and hid the truth in order to help install a compromised crony into the White House. That was me retweeting this tweet from October 22nd. We had weeks before the election. They could have warned us. They could have told the people. I tried. Many independent news outlets tried, and the left covered it up. Evidence of a money laundering probe into Hunter Biden was apparent in the markings of a series of documents made public, but went largely unnoticed in the days leading up to the November election. They didn't. They were suppressed, unnoticed. That's what they claim. Rolling Stone, October 21st. Vile, baseless conspiracy theories are spreading about Hunter Biden. And despite pledges to curb misinformation in the lead up to the election, social media sites aren't stopping them. Amazing. Newsbusters put together a compilation of all the people saying the story was Russian disinformation. We now know that we are facing a very serious threat. A compromised president who, let me just tell you this. Let me say this. Perhaps Joe's not in on it. What would Joe Biden do to protect his son? Is that why he's running for office? Is that why he ran for office? Is that why, even after being told he didn't have to do this, he did? Is it why other Democrats dropped out? Because maybe there's other Democrats involved and they pressured these other candidates to just put their weight behind Joe Biden? I'm not talking about a vast conspiracy. I'm talking about someone who's in the Joe Biden family calling Buttigieg and convincing them to drop out. Maybe they were complicit. Maybe they aren't. Maybe Biden just said, get him to drop out. We're in trouble. You know, we've got this lawsuit coming. Civil war was trending on Twitter the other day. Now seditious 17 is trending. They're saying these Republican states that are challenging the results are seditious. You tell me, do we sit back and just say the corrupt criminal family has won and the criminal enterprise that is mainstream news helped him and we do nothing? Or do we sue and we fight back in the courts to make sure this cannot happen? I don't know what to tell you. We're in serious trouble. We're in very, very serious trouble. I can only look at this news right here as Trump signs his fourth historic peace agreement between Israel and Arabic nations, potentially bringing about peace in the Middle East. We're learning that a crooked, corrupt family is going to take the presidency. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tonight at 8 p.m. live, youtube.com/TimcastIRL. We're going to be talking a lot about voter fraud with hard evidence. Stick around, and I'll see you all then.